Uh, Boy, I'm telling you, it's crazy. You know, we're in a tight spot. Um, Global civilization is in a tight spot. And that's not going to change, unfortunately. But human beings are wired to believe that we can overcome anything and to ignore our problems and get on with it, which is not a bad trait to have, obviously. But modern techno industrial civilization is on its way out. Um, but we believe in technology, we believe in engineering. We're hubristic creatures. Today I posted a lot on Globe Hacker's Facebook page about collapse. I mean, there are so many good writers, researchers, and scientists studying overshoot, climate change, global heating, the environment, biology, all these things. There are just so many great people out there doing great work. It would take lifetimes to go through it all. But it's not hard to get the gist of the thing, the predicament, if you just do a little bit of reading and research. Why would you want to do that? Sounds depressing. It's really not. It helps you focus on what's really important in your lives. Um, what can you do for you and yours in your community to make life a little nicer, if not better? And how can you psychologically and economically, in any sense, prepare for what Nate Hagens calls the great simplification? What that really just means is diminishing returns on energy, EROI. The low hanging fruit is not low hanging anymore. It's becoming harder and harder to access, requiring more and more energy. If we started investing oil and gas energy 30, 40 years ago into developing a different energy system, we might have had a chance at a managed degrowth or change in the economic, socioeconomic system over a period of time with some form of agency, in other words, planning and decision making and thought processes, trains of thought that lead to better outcomes over time. But we're accelerating towards the crash, and I've said that a million times over the last 15 years. So what? It doesn't make me special. But we're instead, we're just kind of moving forward with all of our really ridiculous, hubristic, off-center, crazy belief systems. And we have to go to war. We have to do investing our energy at this time in warfare is ridiculously stupid. I mean, I feel sorry for the special military operation or invasion of Ukraine. It's a terrible thing. People always have reasons for doing things. It's not like they just wake up in the morning and decide they're going to do some major thing in the world. The U.S. has been bombing places and invading places forever, and we don't seem to care. I just looking at what's going on in the Middle East is so horrific and tragic. It's mind-boggling to me. It's beyond comprehension, even though I do comprehend it to a certain degree. And I believe that this particular, call it what you will, genocide or violence or Holocaust, however you want to couch it, war on terror, war on drugs, whatever the fuck you want to war on, is orders of magnitude worse than any genocide that came before. Why? Because there's no plausible deniability here. In the old days, the hordes would come in and kill everyone in the village. Massacres happened. And you didn't see it coming. It just happened. And, they times were different back then. Culture was different back then. All the wars of history, you read all these history books about what led up to the War of 1812, or what led up to Napoleon's Grand Army going to Moscow, or what led up to World War I, or whatever. There's tons and tons of good books on these subjects. But a lot of times the players involved, they're just competing for resources and power. And it's the great game, and they're doing what they do. Most people are unaware of it. They just have no clue, right? So a lot of people in World War II said, we didn't know that the Nazis were putting a certain class of people and Jewish people in ovens and gassing them to death en masse. We didn't know. So you had this plausible deniability. Now, let's put aside the fact that Americans have been anti-Semitic forever. There's been anti-Semitism and Nazism in the United States in the 30s and way before that. Let's just put antebellum South to one side, slavery to one side, all this stuff. The massacre of Native Americans. Let's just throw that all in a basket and say, well, that's just what people do. Fine. But today, we're all watching it. If you care to look, the starvation, the suffering, and the massacres that keep happening. And of course, Donald Trump got $100 million from a prominent Zionist person. I'm not going to name names here. What's the point? Everyone knows. And, whenever he talks tough about killing everybody in the Middle East, he says shalom. It's just a nod to Bibi and to the fanatics, the Jewish and Zionist extremists in Israel. He's saying, I got your back. I know who backed me in my bid to become the president of the United States. They get carte blanche. It's like Trump goes back and forth with Ukraine. Send them some token weapons and support and, whatever. We'll talk to both sides. And I just want to be seen as a hero at the end of the day. Doesn't matter who we throw under the bus. It's back and forth. You never know from one day to another what his thinking is going to be on anything, especially Ukraine. But when it comes to Israel, there's no question. And I've posted a lot of books, I've read a lot about the subject, the history of the Middle East, and Zionism, Christian Zionism, and so on. What's happening right now is worse because we all know what's happening, and we don't care. We're not going to do anything about it. The people who do march and protest and get arrested for it and deported for it are few and far between. Less than 1%, if that, 0.001% of a population. People just aren't stepping up to stop it. It's like Rwanda. You have Rwanda happening. Everybody's watching it on TV, on Telegram, on WhatsApp, on all the tubes every single day. And you're just sitting around saying, who do we send weapons to? Which side? Hutu, Tutsi, which side? Let's decide. It's absurd and it's madness. But this is what it is. Europe wants to rearm now. It would rather, even though it's deindustrialized, can't get cheap energy anymore, all that's on the wane, it can't think of anything better to do. The way you keep in power in this crazy social economic ideology that we all believe in is to foment chaos and war. And it's been a while. Europe hasn't had a major war since World War II. You can talk about the Balkans, the breakup of Yugoslavia, of course. That was a thing. NATO went in and bombed the hell out of that place to put an end to it. These activities in Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan and all that stuff, these are just, par for the course part of doing business, business as usual for the West. We don't care about those people because they don't matter to us at all. So this is what makes it so horrific, really, is that we just don't care. And at the end of the day, I think the Nazis in the States, the fanatics, the white supremacists, all these really crazy right-wing people and techno-libertarians, whether or not they're Jewish or not doesn't really matter. They're going to throw Jewish people under the bus again. They're going to blame it on the Jews. If things fail, if they go south, it'll be the Jews' fault again. Remember that Europe invented, let's call it modern anti-Semitism. I know that the imperial concerns of Rome can't be couched as anti-Semitism. They were just running their, imperial empire. But, the blood libel thing, we're watching Israel do it in real time, So it's just mind-boggling that this can happen, never again unless we do it. It's terrible. So, the religious animosity in the Middle Ages that were fomented by, the church and so on, that somehow, there was this conspiracy coming from Jewish people. And again, it's like today we're all concerned about LGBTQA++, whatever, and woke and culture wars and so on. And none of these things matter. It's a tiny minority of people that we're pointing our finger at and blaming for things. Russophobia and xenophobia have really no value. They're not useful at all in the predicament we find ourselves in late modernity, late modern techno-industrial civilization, and in particular this kind of rapacious global capitalism that's become libertarian and high-tech and full of fantasies, where transhumanism, singularity, all this kind of fantasy world. It's easier to believe these fantasies than to face reality. It's just too hard for us for some reason. I think reality is not that hard to grasp or to confront or to live with, but it requires us understanding our limitations. And each one of us as an individual has different limitations, and society has limitations, and cities have limitations. There are limitations to everything, right? If you look at physics, if you look at biology. And we don't know that much. We think we do, but we really don't. This quote from E.O. Wilson is very nice. Where did I put that? E.O. Wilson tells us that the real problem of humanity is the following. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And it is terrifically dangerous, and it is now approaching a point of crisis overall. So E.O. Wilson, he was 1929 to 2021 university professor emeritus at Harvard, and he was a pioneer in efforts to preserve and protect biodiversity. Imagine that. Why would one want biodiversity? He won a lot of awards, Pulitzer Prize, all that stuff. His books on human nature and the ants is a great book. So it's a horrible thing. So Indica's talking about this. American opinions provable have fuck all to do with American operations. What will be incredibly easy to say as it all goes away, all it takes is one politician to say the Jews did it, and he'll find plenty of play. They've certainly been going crazy. So, you know, the pogroms and so on before World War II and World War I in Eastern Europe, in parts of Europe, they go way back. And, you know, the origin of this early Christian theology that Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus and all that stuff, it goes way back. But the Europeans perfected it. And they are so good at inflicting violence upon each other. European history is a history of warfare. Oh, yeah, you have the pandemics and the Black Death and these other things. But, you know, war, man. We're not going to get over it. We can't think our way out of it. And so we sit here and we plan for war, which will end badly for everybody. We're accelerating towards the collapse of civilization because we can't imagine a way to preserve it. It's as if civilization has a built-in self-destruct mechanism inside every human being that just says we're going to believe in growth on a finite, infinite growth on a finite planet. No matter what, we're going to convince ourselves that that's possible. We're going to terraform Mars. We're going to, you know, somehow go to other galaxies. There's just no evidence that we'll ever be able to do that. But it would take a long time. It would take more than another 5 years and $5 billion of investment. The AI thing is insane. The amount of GPUs required for these data centers, it's madness. And we just aren't willing to live within our limits. And now we're witnessing this evil clique in Israel. Zionists think they cunningly allied with the Germans who genocided them and the Americans who pushed their boats back. But this was always a mirage of convenience, and it's pretty fucking inconvenient now. So Indica's saying, my prediction is that this will end when A, the resistance builds up too much pressure inside America, that it B, explodes during the greatest depression, and C, blows Israel and Jews out of prepared pressure valve. So in other words, all these things in the polycrisis are coming to fruition, and it's being accelerated by our idiocy and hubris, spending our resources on war when we should be spending it on infrastructure. and I mean, it's madness. So what's going to happen is the crash is going to happen, and then it's going to bounce back against Jews, as it usually does, unfortunately, or other minority groups, you know, other scapegoat communities that we can blame for everything. And of course, a lot of Americans will just blame Satan. Satan did it. It absolves us of any responsibility for what's going on. Out of our hands, you know, our leaders got to do what they got to do, you know, type of thing. And it's a tragedy. I mean, you can't even conceive of the suffering of these people in the Middle East. It just doesn't touch you. It's water off a duck. And that's what makes this particular, call it what you will, war on terror, genocide, exponentially, I mean, orders of magnitude worse than anything that came before. We know what's going on. We have the ability to learn about how things work. And we stubbornly cling to ignorance and refuse to educate ourselves and understand that if we have any agency at all, we must cultivate it through hard work. And we have to start to do something about this predicament, the polycrisis, this warmongering madness, this ridiculous idea that you can have infinite growth on a finite planet. It has to be stopped. But it probably won't. So what's going to happen is we're just going to have to go through it. The only way out is through, as they say. And it's not going to be fun or comfortable for anybody. And that's probably because we just don't have the agency that we think we have. Like Noam Chomsky says, we act as if we have free will. But what does that mean, really? We live in a deterministic universe, and we're all buffeted about by propaganda and PR and bullshit 24/7. And we cling to stories, narratives, conspiracy stories, and other narratives because it makes us feel better. And it's easier and it feels better to believe things than to learn about things, because that requires using some of one's caloric energy to exercise your brain, to focus, to concentrate, to learn new things, to confront uncomfortable realities. So it's a tragedy. It breaks my heart that people just don't care. And maybe they never did. And maybe we just get too excited and we just like killing each other, which is all manner of cruelty, 7 deadly sins. We just can't get over it, no matter how many religions we come up with to act as a narrative excuse for our warlike conquering ways. We need God in our corner. It's difficult to be a Buddhist about things or Taoist about things or tree hugger about things. That's no fun. There wouldn't be any Shakespeare if that was the mentality of people. But hunter-gatherers we will become in the future. For now, you and yours, your children, your offspring, get to go through the worst period in human history. And it doesn't get any better than today. So the idea is to focus on what's truly important to you, because this is it. And it breaks my heart, man. People don't want to know about these things. They just want to focus on the next shiny object. And if it's, AI is going to save us, Trump's going to save us, France and the UK are going to kill all the Russians. It's fucking nuts. We're sick. We're sick. Our species is really messed up. But on the other hand, I love people. I enjoy life. I feel extremely fortunate to be alive where I am and still healthy, and to know a few nice people. And it's great to be alive. I really hope that we get together in our communities and make friends and get closer to one another and care for each other more, because we're gonna need support over the coming years. Nothing is getting better. We burned more carbon, it just every year is another record. And the feedbacks in the environment are kicking in, and nothing can stop them. There's no miracle. You can hope that an alien will come down and save us, or that Jesus will come down and save us, or that the technologists and engineers will save us, carbon capture, new batteries, whatever. But the reality is, you're going to see all the garbage on the street when people are filing out of the cities, trying to go somewhere where they can scratch a living out of the dirt. And you're going to see a whole bunch of really useless electric cars that you can't charge anymore. Maybe you can sleep in them, stay out of the elements, keep out of the rain. And maybe, the new housing in the future will be just sleeping in cars, abandoned cars. I don't want to sound absurdly crazy and doomist, gloomist, whatever. But if you study these things carefully, and I'm talking about the science behind these things, don't fret about scientism. Scientism is not to get you. Science, the scientific method, is just one of the best ways we have to parse reality, to figure out how things work. And lots of good, sincere, well-meaning, caring, loving human beings around the world labor day in and day out at the bench to figure shit out. And they're not winning any awards. They're not walking on any red carpets. They're not on YouTube counting clicks and likes and all that kind of thing. They're just doing their work because they love their work. And they want to know how things work, how nature works. And nature has the last word because we are part and parcel of nature. We are nature. And we can't live without it. Life begets life. Life depends on life, as I always say. And if biodiversity is wrecked too much, E.O. Wilson devoted his life to trying to stop that. Education doesn't help, does it? Then we go the way of the dinosaurs. But it doesn't matter because the band's still playing and they still have lots of champagne at the bar and the view is nice, the stars are beautiful. So here now, live, love, laugh, and be happy when the red, red robin comes bobbing along until there ain't no more red, red robins. I read an article about the populations of birds crashing worldwide, and it kills me. Every day when I see a hawk or a falcon around here where I live, I just feel so good. There used to be an owl that visited every night. And, I've seen owls. It's just so nice to see that and know that there's still a food chain supporting these beautiful birds. And, the idea that that food chain falls apart and these animals go extinct just kills me, man. It kills me. I can't stand it. And we don't seem to give a shit. If we can't be compassionate about children starving to death in Gaza or Lebanon, what the hell is wrong with us? Why would we care about freaking kites and hawks and falcons and eagles? Why would we give a shit? And I read another article about they're speculating that some blue whales are committing suicide. They have thoughts and feelings, animals do, and apparently dolphins and whales are extremely intelligent animals. And one can kind of imagine that they might be a little depressed for whatever reasons they have. And it's so damn sad. You look at your pets, your children, and you have this theory of mind. You can kind of see they're thinking, they're feeling, they're conscious. They got some magical thing going on. And you feel connected to it. You anthropomorphize over it, and you feel, a relationship. You have a relationship with these creatures, with these people. I just don't understand how people can't broaden their concern and compassion and empathy to include human beings like you and yours who are starving to death and being bombed to death. And we support it because we do nothing. We do nothing. That's why it's worse. We know better. We've learned from history, have we not? We have the information, the data, and we just let it happen. We don't lift a finger. And you know, people want to have fun and be happy and all that. I understand that. So this is not an exciting thing to put on YouTube that's going to make me popular. If I cared about that, I wouldn't be talking about this. I'd pick some hot topic and just rail on it forever and get all emotional, excited. I have millions of followers. People would be buying me coffee left and right. And I'd be taking my camera on trips and showing all the beautiful things in the Iberian Peninsula people can dream about. What really kills me is that in 5 or 10 years, we won't be dreaming about that anymore. We won't be pet sitting. We won't be, nomads going around the world doing Python programming, whatever it is. Those dreams will die. And it's just like unfortunate, because my whole life I always thought there was another destination, another thing I could do, another thing I could learn. And it was possible because we had stability. It was an illusion. There was never any stability. But now it's much more unstable. And in systems, complex systems, when the mean is upset or the stability in a system is thrown off, it can crash really quick, and it's devastating. And that's what we're watching every day, and we don't seem to care. We just don't care. So, whatever you do, remember what's important to you, what's really important. Forget about all these trivial things. Don't watch the news ever. Don't read these commercial publications. They're all propaganda. They're all PR. They're all bullshit. Find good information and delve into it and learn something. It's not that hard, and it's not that uncomfortable, and it's kind of fun. And you'll be less irritated by life. I learn about these things, and it's not that irritating. It's interesting for me, and it helps me feel more resilient and more at ease, because I'm confronting reality in as honest a way as I can, seeing as how I'm a limited human being who's not that smart. It just makes me feel better to know the truth. I'm not afraid of it. And of course, the truth is a difficult thing to parse, right? Everyone thinks they know the truth. But until you've really delved into things carefully, you have no capacity to understand the truth. You need the tools of critical thinking and logic and mathematics and all these things to figure it out. And you need to be open to it. And you have to stop scapegoating, pointing fingers at other people, and nurturing hatred and fear. Because that's what these asshole careerists, politicians want. They want you irritated. They want to play on your fear and your hatred and your ignorance, and tell you stories that are easy for you to believe because they sound about right intuitively. Makes kind of sense. Yep, it's worse, folks, and it's being perpetrated by people who were the victims of the crime of the 20th century. And now they're committing the crime of the 21st century. And we're watching it like a Netflix series. Say hello to a friend today. Boulianti, out. So just before I go, I want to look at, what does it mean to be a Christian? What kind of Christian? What kind of Muslim? what kind of Jew, right? These cultures are not monoliths. There are different kinds of groups that identify in different ways, you know. So, for example, I guess in Jewish tradition, a religious definition, for example, maybe from the Orthodox or conservative Judaism, and I'm not a Jew, okay? But I have a lot of friends who are, and I've been to Israel, and I grew up in the States, and so on, and you know. So, if you're a conservative, I guess, and, you know, maybe you're Jewish if you're born to a Jewish mother, or if, you've undergone a formal conversion to Judaism. So the Orthodox Church, for example, you have this catechism. You go through this learning phase where you're learning about the church and its traditions and dogmas. And eventually you're baptized and into the church, and then you can call yourself an Orthodox Christian, like whether it's Greek, Russian, or Ukrainian, or whatever. And all those have slight differences, right? But the basic religious tradition is pretty much locked in. And I, with the Talmud and all that, I guess, for a conservative Jewish person, that's locked in as well, right? I mean, you have to learn certain things, the dogmas, the traditions, the beliefs, the stories, and all that stuff. And then for a Reformed Jew, I guess, because I grew up with lots of Reformed Jews, I've been to temple with Reformed Jews. My best friend in my 20s was a Reformed Jew from a family. I mean, they're just fantastic guy, good friend. I'm not a Jew. I was raised as an Irish Catholic, but also I had relatives who were Episcopalians, right? Anglo-Saxon, that kind of guy. So Reformed Judaism, I guess, has more, variants. So you could be Jewish through some kind of patrilineal descent if the child is raised with a Jewish identity, something like that. But patrilineal, I think that's it. You got some Jewishness according to that. First of all, I have to say, right, there's no race. There is no race. There's only the human race. So let's get the racial stuff way the fuck out of this. It has no bearing. It's not real. And there's a vast literature on it, right? You're not of a different race because you have different levels of melatonin or whatever. Even though obviously there are genetic differences between groups of people around the world, there is no race. So ethnic and cultural definitions obviously are important, because if you're a Baptist, a Southern Baptist, or if you're, you identify as a particular kind of Buddhist, Buddhism isn't a monolith either. There's all kinds of Buddhists, Zen Buddhists and Hiragana, Hathagana, whatever it is. I don't remember all of them, but, and they have different beliefs and different traditions and different lines of teachers that have passed along their traditions over many generations. So Judaism is also considered an ethno-religious group, and that means that Jewish identity can be tied to history, a shared history, an ancestry, cultural traditions, and that includes a place, a region. If you go back to I forget what it was, but it's a couple thousand years or more, was the origin of Jerusalem as a place. But it's changed so much over the history, so many times, as different empires and different groups went through the region and took over it. It changed over and over again, right? if you study the history of that region, it's fascinating. There have been so many, groups in control of that city over thousands of years. And even in recent time, just go back a couple hundred years. So some people might identify as Jewish culturally or ethnically, even if they don't actively practice the religion. There's so many people that they're Jewish, culturally, ethnically. Like culturally, ethnically, I guess I'm Irish, right? I mean, that's what my 23andMe says. That's what my aunt and uncle say. That's what my mom tells me. My experience in County Clare, Ireland, growing up. So, but I don't practice Catholicism. I'm a secular Catholic. I hate that term. It's like I'm a cultural Christian. But yeah, I came from that culture, right? But I've grown. I've learned other things besides. So I don't identify with it so intensely. My Catholicism, my Catholic roots, or my Episcopalian roots, right? American roots, Irish roots. So there's all kinds of variations and complexities in these communities. And the communities worldwide, they're Jewish communities worldwide. When you're in Malaysia, you learn about Jewish communities there. When you're in Shanghai, you learn about Jewish communities there. It's fascinating. And it's a rich history, right? And there are Russian Jews, Ukrainian Jews, German Jews, Polish Jews, American Jews, you know what I mean? Like there are Christians, there are Chinese Catholics. They became Catholic and they identify with Catholicism and they practice it. So Jews are not a race. They're of all different races, just like Christians are. And they're of all kinds of different ethnicities, just like Christians are. And other groups of people, Buddhists, Thai Buddhists, right? You have Bali Hindu, for example, Balinese Hindu people, right? And you can see the rich history of Buddhism in Afghanistan. They blew up those Buddhist statues, right? Things come and go. People come in, they conquer, they destroy your history and replace it with their own narratives. So there's not one way to look like a Jew, and there isn't one kind of Jew. So there can't be any kind of anti-Semitism is nonsense. It's ridiculous. It's stupid on the face of it. It's just ignorant. Because you just can't hate such a varied and global community. It makes no sense. And you can't point to their being evil any more than you can point to Russians being evil or Chinese people being evil. They got this conspiracy, the Davos crowd, whatever. The conspiracy, it doesn't exist. What exists are all these stories that we tell ourselves and want to believe in. And then once we adhere to them, they can screw us up pretty badly. So there's no one way to be a Jew. There's not one Jew. It's not a monolith. And there are lots of Jewish people in the world that just don't like what the Jewish Zionist fanatics in Israel are doing. They don't like it. Oh God, go figure. I mean, they don't like it. So it's not about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is ridiculous on the face of it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't anti-Semites, people with simplistic thinking, who can point to a varied and global community and think they know what they are, who they are, without giving them any leeway for the complexity and variance of their communities and as individuals, families. You know, there's difference obviously between a Polish Jewish community in Poland and a German Jewish community in Berlin before World War II, right? And a Ukrainian Jewish community and so on. For some, you know, it's just like so simplistic to think that to be anti-Semite, but there are people like that. There are Nazis today. And they're going to be coming out of the woodwork when this whole thing in the Middle East goes tits up. And they're going to blame the Jews because they're ignorant, freaking idiots. Anyone with a brain and a heart and any cursory knowledge of human history and culture, anthropology, could not possibly be an anti-Semite. You know, you hate the Catholics, you know, Catholic heretic dogs. Man, it's 2025, okay? So let's honor and respect and be thankful for the variations and complexities of global Jewish communities and traditions and ways of life, just like we would extend that same courtesy to Muslim people and Buddhist people. There obviously is sectarian warfare that goes on in the Muslim community and Islam as well, right? Sunni and Shia and all that kind of Alawite and all that stuff. You saw the movie Lawrence of Arabia. And, you know, the Muslim conquests are complex. It's not a monolith. And, you know, Islam has a great tradition. And Islamic people are beautiful people. And just like the Jews, they have various kinds of communities, some more secular than others. You can't understand the differences between Pakistan Muslim and somebody from some part of the Middle East, you know, Iraq or Iran or whatever. There's nuances, but they're people. They're human beings, and they're not a race. Reach out, embrace, learn about, respect. Do you want people to respect you? Then you have to respect people. Do unto others, right? The golden rule. And practice that. It's not going to hurt you. You're going to learn something about people, and you're going to love learning about them. And it's going to make you respect them. And you'll see them as human beings like you are, like your people are. Not to get all ecumenical on you, because if you're a dogmatic Orthodox Christian, there can be only one way. And our tradition tells you what the truth is. And you have faith in that, and the faith transcends everything else. It has to. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But I submit to you that you could be a dogmatic Orthodox Christian and still not hate Jewish people or Muslim people. You can say, I'm on the path to salvation because I'm following the right religion. God knows it, and I know it. But that doesn't mean you have to kill all the other people, right, or convert them. You could have compassion for them, like Jesus. That might not be a bad thing. All right, so anti-Semitism is nonsense, just like any other kind of blanket prejudice, and hatred is nonsense. All right, that's the end of this one. Thanks for listening. William T. out.